Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. I've got this cute little scene card here that I'm using some of my favorite stamps with. First is the Paper Smooches Chubby Chums. I'm using a little kitty cat. Then I'm also using the Best Fishes stamp set by Simon Says Stamp. It has some matching dies. I've used this set a number of times. And then I'm breaking out my new Christmas gift, which is the Gansai Tambi watercolor set. I really love these watercolors, and as you can see, I've already opened them up and I've put my little samples on the lid. And these watercolors are very opaque and colorful. I'm going to be using two different aqua painters. One is a thin tip and one is more of a thicker tip brush. And I'm actually going to add an even thicker tip once we get there. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of Strathmore watercolor paper. This is 90 pound, and I'm going to pencil out the outline of the fish bowl. And then I'm going to arrange my stamps, and then I just want to stamp the fish right now. So I'm just going to hold that cat down so it just doesn't attach to my block. And then I'll go ahead and stamp it down there right in the fish tank. And then I'm going to heat emboss this with clear embossing powder, and that'll help me stay in the lines with the watercolor. Now I'm also going to be embossing the cat, so I'm going to stamp that. And this is VersaFine black onyx ink, and then I stamped off again. So my third generation stamping is this cat off to the side here, and I just need the bottom part. Now I'm going to brush off some of that embossing powder because I want it to be smooth, because I'm going to be taking that faded piece of the cat and gluing it on top. Alright, so now I'm going to take out, you can see these colors come in little compartments that are removable, so I'm going to pull out the colors that I'm going to be using. And there's numbers on the box, there's numbers on the palettes also, so you can line it back up. Now the first thing I'm going to do with this fish is load it up with water, and then I'm going to drop my color in. And as you can see, it's very vibrant color. And I'm just going to move it around here, but since I've already put water on my cardstock, it's moving around mostly on its own. And you really don't need much color. These paints are very intense. Now I decided I wanted to add some purple, but as you can see, yes, they are very intense, and so it was a little too much purple and it didn't blend with the green, so I went ahead and took a tissue and wiped the whole thing up and decided to start over. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe the whole thing down with the water. I'm doing this much faster now. Put the green back on, and then I'm going to let that dry and add the purple as a second layer. Now for this other fish, I'm using my thin tipped brush. This is a Ranger watercolor brush, and look at how just amazingly bright this orange is. If you want it to be lighter, you can use more water, but when you use it as a dark color, it's almost like acrylic paint. It's really, really pretty. So you almost have the option of acrylic or watercolor look. Alright, now on for the cat. I'm just using black here, loading it up with water, and I'm going to be really careful because these colors I'm finding out are so vibrant. This is the first time I'm using them, by the way. And I'm kind of nervous, as you can see, so I decided to use my craft mat. So I put a little bit of color on my craft mat, and the nice thing is if it's too dark, you just wipe it on this tissue and add more water and carry on. And you can always wipe it directly off the paper with your tissue. So here I've applied the black, and I'm just going to spread it around, and I'm really not going to reload my brush with color. As you can see, I'm going to go all the way to the end before I pick up a little bit more color. But I found that using my craft mat was helpful because I could see exactly how much pigment I had that I was going to be using. And then I darkened it up a little bit more on the left-hand side. Now for this portion of the cat that's going to be showing through the fishbowl, I just wanted a very, very light coloring. So I'm going to make sure I don't have too much black, and I'm going to test it out in a little area there, and then I'll just wash the whole thing over. So it really needs to be faded because it's going to be something that we're looking kind of through the fishbowl with. Alright, now that my green fish is dried, I'm going to add my purple. I'm going to use my craft mat to see exactly how much color I have on here. And I do have quite a bit, so I'm squeezing my brush to get more water. And I tested out just a little bit, and there was a lot in there, so I just wiped my brush off. So at that point I was just really adding water. And so I did have a lot of purple coming out, and I wanted it to be purple in the back and then sort of fading into the green. So then I just kept wiping off my brush until I really had just water and faded into the green. And then I just kind of finished off my lines there. So for the lines of the other fish, I'm going to use purple, but as you can see, I'm just using mostly water, and I'm dropping a little bit of the pigment in to see how dark it's getting. I wanted it to be a really light purple, so this wasn't as light as I wanted, so I went ahead and just wiped it up with my tissue. Just barely touched it and it soaked it up. And then I did it again and it worked great. So as you can see, you kind of need a little bit of practice. This is me practicing on camera with you. But they really are beautiful, brilliant colors, and you just need to kind of work with them a little bit, I think, to figure out exactly how much ink is coming off every time you put something in there. Well, not ink, paint, I guess. All right, so now that my cat is dry, I'm going to do a second layer of black to make his stripes a little bit darker. So again, I'm applying more water by squeezing my brush onto my craft mat, and I'm putting some paint into it to make it a little darker, but I don't want it to be like pitch black. So I'm fading it out a little bit with some more water. And then I'm wiping it up with my tissue if it gets a little bit too dark. And that's the beauty of it. So for his stripes, actually, I wanted to be really dark, so I added less water and more pigment for that. Now for this area behind the fishbowl, it's just going to be kind of faded, so I'm going to just kind of make it a darker gray, and also the stripes. Now for the bowl, I'm going to cover my entire bowl with water first, and this is when I pulled in a thicker aqua painter. This is by Stampin' Up. And I'm just going to cover the whole thing with water. It takes a little bit of time, and some of it will dry as you're finishing the other part of it, but it's okay, you can just add a little bit more. Now I'm going to be really careful, so I put a very little down and thought that's just not enough. So I went and got some more paint and dropped it in there. And I'm sorry about that glare there, my light is right above it. But because I've got all the water on the cardstock, I can just kind of dab it on. So I'm just kind of putting dots with my brush and dabbing it on, and it's blending out with the water that's already on my cardstock. And I'm making it so that there are some that are dark, some areas that are light, because I want it to be just a little variable. So I'm going to continue this. You could see I dropped a little bit too much paint, but no big deal. I just kind of ran off the side because I'm going to be cutting this out until I got the dark part off of my brush. So I'm going to keep going here, and you can see I just grabbed some ink, and I'm mostly keeping that to the outside so I can push it away from the fishbowl if I need to. And then I'm going to go and take the blue and just do a very light wash over this bottom portion of the cat that's going to be through the fishbowl. And then I just used another color here. It's a pink for his nose, and I'll have the numbers of the colors I used. Now I'm going to take some basic grade cardstock by Stampin' Up and run that through my Big Shot and cut out the fishbowl, and then I'll just stamp it with some VersaFine black ink. It didn't come out perfect, but it was no big deal, I don't think. So now I'm going to cut all these pieces out. And you know, sometimes when you cut, you can see the white on the edge, like the side of the paper, especially if it's thick paper. So what I like to do is just take a black marker and color it in all the way around the edge. Now this is the light piece I cut, and I'm going to cut the top portion off just underneath where the paws are. And I'm going to take a craft knife, and I'm going to cut just the bottom of the paws and then a little bit up on the side. Not too much, and be careful because I'm very unlucky with sharp objects. So I'm going to take a piece of paper, just a scrap piece of paper. I'm going to put it underneath there to make sure that I've cut up high enough so that I can put this little guy over the fishbowl. Now that piece I cut that was faded, I'm going to put some 2A glue pen on him and put him down on top. And I trimmed the back cat a little bit shorter to make sure it wouldn't go through. You wouldn't see it through the background. And then I'll just pop him right there on top of the fishbowl. And his paws will be hanging above, so it looks like he's sort of about to hop in, I guess. Now I'm going to glue the fishbowl, and I wanted to cut off the top first because I knew it would be hard to cut around the cat. So I'm just going to cut down the top, and then I'll glue the piece in place. This is some Tombow Mono Multi Glue, and this is really strong glue, which is why I'm using it. Just a light application of it, and then I'll kind of arrange it to where I want it, and then I'll just trim off the excess. And because I trimmed the top, now I don't have to trim around the cat. So I'm just going to go all the way around here, and I kind of wish I had used a little heavier watercolor paper. Maybe the 110 pound would have been a little better. So I've arranged all my sentiments on a block and stamped them all at the same time, VersaFine ink, and then I decided it was too much trouble with the trimmer, so I just hand cut all these little sentiments. This is an Avery L paper pad, which you know I don't really use pattern paper very much, but I have used this pad quite a bit and I really, really like it. It's the Brights collection, and I think I like it because the colors are it's all very monochrome, so each page only has one color and maybe a different version of itself. Okay, so this is C4 and C1, and I'm just creating a shadow so it looks like the bowl is sitting on something instead of floating in space. And now I'm going to take some linen thread and I'm going to tie a knot. This is Stampin' Up! Linen thread. I like it because it's not stiff, it's very flexible, so it moves around and you can form it. And then I'm going to measure it out and trim it at the top. I'll take a glue dot and put it right underneath the knot, and that'll hold the bottom of my linen thread in place. Now I wanted this to be kind of swirling, I guess curving up toward the top, so I covered the bottom of it with a 2-way glue pen, and then I just used my finger to press down as I kind of turned it and curved the string, and the 2-way glue pen is great for that. And then I just used some surgical tape to tape the back and trim off the excess. Then I just arranged my sentiments and I kind of made them a little crooked so it looked like they were hanging on there, and I used a dimensional Stampin' Up! And I cut it in half, and I put 1/2 on one side, 1/2 on the other, and put all those sentiments up. And then I'm going to take my panel with my ATG gun and I'm going to put it on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch folded piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock. And that's the card for today. So there was kind of a lot of steps to it, but it was really fun and I enjoyed the watercoloring, and I'm going to have to use these watercolors again because I really, really like them. Okay, so that's it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.